Hello everyone, I am back to do my monthly wrap-up for July. Yeah, all in all, July was quite a good month for me. I managed to read 14 books. I was at 13, and then it was the last day, which was yesterday, and I'm like, crap, so I really quickly found a short book on my shelf and just read that so I would be at an even number. Yeah, with one big exception, I really enjoyed all of the books that I read this month. It was a very good month. I had a few, at least 3 5-star books, possibly more than that, if I recall correctly. Okay, so again, I had some interruptive noises going on, but it should all be good now. First, I'm just going to do a really quick wrap-up of all the books I've previously reviewed, and I reviewed quite a lot. I think I reviewed half of the books already, so this should be pretty quick and easy. The first book that I reviewed was The Fault in Our Stars by John Green. I loved this book. It totally lived up to the hype. It made me feel all sorts of different emotions, and of course I cried. 5 out of 5 stars for that. Definitely read it if you have not read it yet. I didn't even think that I would like John Green after I read his first book, but thankfully I gave him another chance. The next book that I reviewed is The Butterfly Clues by Kate Ellison, and I enjoyed this one. It had a few things bothering me, like the main character's OCD and quirks and that sort of thing, and the mystery being extremely obvious to figure out for the reader, but I still enjoyed it, and I gave it a 4 out of 5. Next, I have The Knife of Never Letting Go by Patrick Ness. I really loved this book as well. Liked the characters, and the world is just totally cool, and original concept here, a different spin on the dystopian sci-fi setting, and I give this a 5 out of 5. Next one is The Girl of Fire and Thorns by Ray Carson. This one was kind of got a slow start for me, but after about a third of the way through, it picked up, and I loved the character development. I really loved the world building in this book as well. It's a Spanish influenced fantasy world that I thought was very cool, and I gave this a 4 out of 5. Next is The Maze Runner by James Dashner. I did enjoy this book, but not quite as much as I thought I would. The beginning, for some reason, was slightly slow for me. I wanted a little bit more character interactions and development. I really wanted to get in the characters' heads, but the ending was really good. I gave this a 4 out of 5 as well, and I'm excited to read the next one, even more so than I'm thinking that one will probably be better than this, but who knows, I don't want to be disappointed. Next, I reviewed Ascendant by Diana Peterfroy. This is the sequel to Rampant, which I really loved, and I loved this one too, and I gave it a 5 out of 5. Wow, it's quite a few 5-star books already. The only thing, it was really extremely frustrating that this is very obviously meant to be the second book in a trilogy, and still so far Diana Peterfroy has no contract to write the third book. Everybody needs to go out and buy this book so she will be able to finish the series, because this ending, so many unsolved issues. But still a 5 out of 5. And the last book that I just reviewed a few moments ago was Shadows on the Moon by Zoe Marriott. I liked the concept of this book very much, and I thought it was quite interesting to read about, but the romance really left me wanting, and some of the world being so much like feudal Japan, and yet being its own thing, and kind of some slight things that I felt were out of place and jarring, but whatever. I thought it was still a good book, and I gave it a 4 out of 5. I said a lot of negative things about it in my review, yet I still gave it a 4 because I still really enjoyed it, and I just had to point out these things that bothered me. Okay, so that is all of the books I reviewed, which is half of the books I read this month. And now I'm going to talk a little bit more about books that I have not reviewed, just a little bit. The first one is Anne of Green Gables by Ellen Montgomery. This is a classic children's book. I'm sure you all know the story. This middle-aged or older brother and sister they're both unmarried and don't have any descendants at all, want to adopt a young boy to help the brother Matthew on the farm, and then they get a girl by mistake. They're going to send her back, but they and the whole town of Avonlea fall in love with Anne Shirley, who is the protagonist. Anne is, I think, 11 at the start of this book, and she just has, the crazy, wacky imagination, and she just, things that, normal people don't think about and see, she comes up with all of these, fantastical stories and ideas about them in her head, and she's quite feisty as well. I really love this book, and I love Anne Shirley. I had only previously read, excerpts from this book, but I'm familiar with the story, and I've already seen all of the adaptations with Megan Follows in them. One of the rare instances where I had already seen, an adaptation before reading the book. I decided, I owned this book. It actually had originally been my sister's, and it was required reading for her in grade school, but not for me. I just really wish that I had read this as a child, because even though it was set over 100 years ago, I was able to identify with so much things about Anne. I'm like, oh my god, that's just how I felt when I was a kid, especially her friendship with Diana Barry, this very, very close relationship. I was very close like that with a couple of my best friends growing up as well, so it was very nostalgic for me and almost made me cry. But yeah, I give it a 4 out of 5. I wish I'd been able to read it 20 years ago. Next, I read Black Sheep by Georgette, and this is a Regency romance, and it is about an old maid character named Abigail Wendover. She and her older sister are both unmarried, and they are in charge of their orphaned niece, who is an heiress. And she has recently caught the eye of this gold-digging no-good guy, and they want to steer her away from him, but along the way, Abby becomes close to this guy's uncle, and against her will, they start to become friends and obviously fall in love. I really, really enjoyed this book. I loved the interactions between Abby and the male lead, who was Miles Caverly, was his name. Very fun and funny. They just have a playful kind of relationship and banter. But it was so short. It's actually, I believe, Georgette Heyer's shortest book, or one of them at least. I wanted some more. I wanted some more interaction between them. I wanted to kind of dig deeper into the story here. So that was slightly let down, and I only gave it a 4, not a 5 out of 5. Next book is The Reckoning by Kelley Armstrong, the last book in the Darkest Powers trilogy. My god, I was interrupted again! It concludes Chloe Saunders, the necromancer, and then all of her magical friends' stories. Really thought this book was enjoyable, just like the rest of the series. I'm sure if you've seen what I thought about those books, I felt the same thing about this. It was a fitting conclusion, and yet it left things open, for future. I believe there's a tie-in sequel series that Chloe is not the main focus, which is the Darkness Rising series, which I do plan to read at a later date. Really like these books. Loved the romance in these books. Really liked it because it took the 3 books to build up, and it's not the usual insta-love, we're already all over each other at the end of the first book. And I think this would have been one of my favorite book series if I had been about 10 years younger when I read it. But as it is, I give it a 4 out of 5. Next book is, oh my god, Incarnate by Jodi Meadows. And I just remembered I did already review this book, and I thought it was a really good concept with very poor execution. And I thought it was going to be this neat, sci-fi, fantasy-esque world, and it was really just a paranormal romance, and not a very well done one at that either. So I gave this a 2 out of 5. See my review. So that means that I reviewed more than half of the books that I... Next book is Outside In by Maria V. Snyder, the sequel to Inside Out. I don't know if this was meant to be a trilogy. So yeah, in this one, the world of Inside is they're getting used to being, after the rebellion, being liberated, so to speak, from the old regime in Inside Out. And Trella is really rejecting this idea that everyone wants her to be a leader. She really does not want to be in a position of leadership. She doesn't think that she would be good to, lead the people. And all of the people seem to have issues with that because they think she started and they believe that she should follow up. I don't want to spoil too much about this book in case you haven't read the first one. But again, I loved this book just as much as Inside Out. It was a really good continuation, and I gave it again a 5 out of 5 stars. I really liked Trella as a character because she has flaws, but she grows and develops over the course of the story, and I love character development. So she has a little bit more development to do in this one. She has to learn still how to trust other people because she didn't quite learn how to do that in the first book. Her issues in certain relationships with certain people in her lives, that kind of thing I really just enjoyed. And there's some new villains in this as well. I don't know if there's meant to be a third book. Where it's ending, it was a good ending. It was not ascendant to where it's just oh my god, what's going on. This is one where it is open so that there could be a sequel, and yet it's not just holy crap, everything has gone to shit. What the hell? So 5 out of 5 for that. The next book is Double Sin by Agatha Christie. This is a series of short stories. A lot of them are with Poirot, and there's, I think, a couple Miss Marples, and then there's 2 other ones that are almost like a Twilight Zone type story where they're supernatural-esque, and they're not really a whodunit mystery. So this book was hit or miss for me. I liked the whodunits a lot. I really liked the main one in here is The Theft of the Royal Ruby, also known as The Adventure of the Christmas Pudding. That was definitely my favorite one, and I almost would have liked to see a complete novel-length version of that. Some of the other short stories were really good. The 2 supernatural kind of stories I really was not into. I'm sorry. It was still enjoyable though, and the last book I read is Choker by Elizabeth Woods, and I picked this because of its length, because this is one of the more recent books that I have acquired, and I normally like to try to read through some of the older books before I do the newer ones. But yeah, this was short, so that's why I chose it. This is a contemporary mystery novel / a thriller, I guess, about this unpopular girl named Kara, who she doesn't really have any friends at school, and she misses her best friend from her old town, Zoe. And then she one day is choking on her lunchroom, and after her crush, who is a popular boy who has a popular girlfriend, he gives her the Heimlich, but I guess his girlfriend is jealous, so all the popular girls start making fun of her and calling her Choker. Who the hell makes fun of someone for almost choking to death? I don't know, but the girls in this book are very, stereotypical and snobby and mean. And so all of a sudden that day, Zoe shows up at Kara's house and said that she's ran away from her troubled home. And so Kara starts to have Zoe secretly live in her room, but then bad things start to happen to some of the mean girls in Kara's class. And Kara, after a while, starts to suspect that Zoe might be doing more than just hanging out in Kara's room. It started off just like a contemporary high school thing, and I knew it was going to have the thriller aspect, but it was written in, the prose did not read thriller to me. It read very much contemporary type thing, so it was always oh my god, it made it all the more suspenseful to me, the way, the way the prose was just very, not casual, but it wasn't the typical, I don't know, it did not read thriller to me going on. It just got more and more twisted. I did figure out the twist about halfway through the book. I put the pieces together and I realized what was really going on, but still, I thought it was a really enjoyable book, and I gave it a 4 out of 5 stars. I do think it would have been better if I had not been able to realize the twist, but I guess I just read too many mystery novels. So that wraps up my July wrap-up. yeah, I'll see you guys next time.